Bom dia, sejam bem-vindos. Nós estamos reiniciando os trabalhos do 15º Congresso UNIDAS e 2º Congresso Internacional de Gestão em Saúde, promovido pela UNIDAS, a União Nacional das Instituições de Autogestão em Saúde. O primeiro painel de hoje tem como tema o modelo americano de atenção à saúde. Para coordenar este painel, nós convidamos ao palco Salviano, presidente da CACI, que virá acompanhado do painelista, Dr. Donnell, e do debatedor Pedro Barbosa, sanitarista, vice-presidente da Fiocruz. Vamos recebê-los com uma salva de palmas. Lembramos que logo após as apresentações nós teremos tempo para perguntas e respostas. Solicitamos que todos façam as questões, como fizemos ontem, por escrito, utilizando o formulário da apostila. Composta a mesa do painel, passo a palavra ao coordenador Salviano. Bom trabalho.
Bom dia a todos e a todas. É com satisfação que a gente retoma os trabalhos desse congresso, que nos tem trazido tantas informações importantes sobre os modelos de saúde e sobre os desafios que nos cabem enquanto gestores, enquanto stakeholders. Nós vamos ouvir agora, no painel 5, o modelo americano de atenção à saúde. Teremos como debatedor o Dr. Donnell e depois, como palestrante, o Dr. Donnell, como debatedor, o Dr. Pedro Barbosa. São dois especialistas, são duas pessoas que entendem do que vão falar e, com certeza, nos trarão ou mais inquietações ou respostas a esse momento que nós vivenciamos na saúde suplementar brasileira, né? A esse momento em que surgem tantas tentações de você criar barreiras de entrada ao invés de gerenciar o acesso, de você criar restrições ao consumo ao invés de você falar em efetividade na gestão de cuidados. Então, vamos ter um bom debate, que os dois sejam bem felizes nas suas colocações e depois a gente abre para a pergunta de vocês.
Bom dia. Well, I would like to thank very much Vilma and Denise and the UNIDAS family for inviting me to the Congresso. I think that Brazil is one of my favorite places in the whole world, and I've wanted to come to Bahia for a long time, so thank you very much. Also, thank you to Teresa, who's translating. She's allowing me to speak English, which is the only language I speak, and you can still understand me. I'm going to be speaking on integrating health into healthcare in the United States. And in doing this, I'm going to start. I think my slide advancer is not working, so I need my backup. I'm going to be talking about health promotion. I'm going to be first speaking about health promotion. What is health promotion? Also, why is it important to integrate health promotion into healthcare in the United States? Now, this is not a simple strategy, and I'm going to be speaking about different approaches: federal policy, work that employers can do, work that hospitals can do, work that the insurance industry can do, and I'm also going to speak about an integrated approach that we're trying to advocate in the United States. My conclusion is that the U.S. system is still 95% reactive treatment approach, and it's only 5% proactive health promotion approach. And I think that the solution will be an integrated approach, not necessarily just a government solution. But I also think that Brazil can leapfrog the United States in 5 years if it focuses its attention right now on doing this. Now, I'd like to start by discussing this wellness continuum, illness-wellness continuum. This is what guided our thinking in the early years of our field. We thought that at one end was premature death, on the left side, and on the right side was optimal wellness. And we thought that what you had to do was progress to the point where you had no measurable illness, and then you could start working on your wellness. And in the mid-90s, I realized that that's actually not the right approach. It's really two different concepts. We have illness on one axis and wellness on the other axis. And if we can start, there are many people, for example, someone with terminal cancer who will never get rid of their illness, but that doesn't mean that they can't start working on their wellness. They can't make sure that they eat very well, that they manage their stress, that they're physically active, and of course that they don't smoke. So then optimal health is this point as far at the top of the axis, far to the right as possible. Now, we think typically of optimal wellness as physical health, certainly medical self-care, managing your weight, eating right, getting enough physical activity, avoiding drugs and tobacco. But we soon realized it's really much more than physical health. There's also emotional health and social health and intellectual health and spiritual health. With physical health at the beginning, that's what we thought initially, and that's really the medical approach, having the physical health at the center, and then helping a person understand how all the other areas tie into their physical health. But we realized that some people might put their physical health at the center, but other people might put their emotional health at the center, or their spiritual health, or their intellectual health. So we have to help a person discover their passions and then understand the relationship between all the other areas of health and their passions. This is very important if we want to attract the whole population. So I am a health nut. I want to be healthy because I want to be healthy because I want to be healthy. It's a circle. But I realize that I'm unusual and that most people aren't this way. One person might have the ultimate goal of being a good parent, or being a successful executive, or a brilliant scientist, or pursuing their faith. So we have to recognize the passions that each person has and allow them to put their passions at their center. Now, it's important to think about, why do people die early? If people die young, why do they die early? And most people think that the reason is actually genetics. You know, and my picture actually disappeared from my slide somehow. I think it's going to come back in a minute. But about 30% of premature deaths are caused by genetics. About 10% are caused by lack of access to the medical care system. Poverty and environment contribute about 15 and 5%, but lifestyle actually accounts for 40% of premature deaths. So why is this important? I'm actually going to walk down to join you a little bit so I can show you my slides a little bit more closely. So you can see, this is the top 10 cause of death in the United States, and these top 10 account for about 70% of all the deaths in the United States. All of these causes that are in green, lifestyle is the primary cause of death. And in the other two, it's a secondary cause of death. Now, the situation is very similar in Brazil, where out of the top 10 causes of death, 9 out of 10 have lifestyle as the primary cause. So very similar situation in Brazil. Overall, we've discovered that about 80% of all chronic diseases, including heart disease, stroke, type 2 diabetes, are caused by lifestyle. And about 40% of all cancers, including 95% of all lung cancers, are caused by lifestyle. Now, in the United States, 45% of people have at least one chronic disease. I'm not sure what the number is in Brazil, but I think it's a similar number. Overall, 70% of all deaths in the United States are from chronic diseases, and this caused 75% of all of our medical care costs, and it also causes 96% of Medicare spending, which is the spending by the federal government for older people, as well as 83% of Medicaid spending. This slide, I think, is too small for you to see, but it's a summary of the cost of obesity in the United States. And, for example, we see that obesity causes somewhere between $85 and $146 billion of medical care costs in the United States. So the reason the federal government in the United States is interested in health promotion is because of the high cost of chronic disease caused by lifestyle. Now, in terms of national health policy, we've actually been making very good progress in the last few years. This is just a list of the many different provisions in the recent Affordable Care Act, the Health Care Reform Bill in the United States, that improve the integration of health promotion into national policy. I'm just going to talk about one of these. There are almost 40 altogether. This is a National Prevention, Health Promotion, and Public Health Council that was created out of the Affordable Care Act. And what was important about this is that this council consists of the secretaries, the president's cabinet members in transportation, agriculture, education, not just health and human services. In the past, most of the work in health was done by Health and Human Services. So this will force our federal government to think in terms of what does agriculture policy have to do with health, and transportation policy, and education policy. And each year, they'll develop a national prevention strategy. The first strategy was actually released in 2011 and has several important components. It focuses on the health and safety of communities, on clinical and community preventive services, on elimination of health disparities, as well as empowering people. And it addresses all these areas. So what's exciting about this, over time, and I think it'll probably take a decade, but the idea is that over time, all aspects of federal policy in the United States will address health. And that's really how we'll be successful. We're not going to be successful by one approach from employers or insurance or healthcare. It's got to really be a societal approach. And the reason the federal government is so interested in this is a plot by year. This is 1970 through 2080. And this is the percent of the gross domestic product that's spent on different areas of spending. For example, this is Social Security, which is the retirement program in the United States. And then this light blue is all other federal spending except for Medicare and Medicaid and health spending. So this is health spending up to the current time. Not really very much, just about 5 or 6% of total gross domestic product. But look at this growth. It's huge growth over the next several decades. Now this line here is revenues from taxes. And you can see that by around 2040, 100% of all federal tax revenues will be consumed just by Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. And look what happens in the future years. So this is all deficit. If this actually happens, the United States will not exist. We won't have a military. We won't be able to pay our bills. We'll owe everybody in the world lots of money and not be able to pay it back. So the United States could actually go bankrupt if this happens. And I think the same thing is going to happen to most countries of the world when they start looking at these numbers. The United States is further ahead than most countries in terms of projecting the costs, but I think the same pattern will be seen in many countries of the world. So this is why the federal government is interested in this area. Now, I'd like to talk briefly about workplace health promotion programs. The workplace is a fabulous place to do health promotion because people are at work all day. It's to the benefit of the employer for people to be healthy. If they're more healthy, they're more productive. Certainly if they're self-insured like UNIDAS employers, if they contain the medical care costs, it's better for the profit of the company. Also, they get to know each other over time. They're in one place for several years. You can create a culture of health. Now, we've had great success in workplace health promotion programs in the United States. This is from a meta-analysis conducted by some famous health economists from Harvard University. And they looked at, there were a total of 44 studies that had an average of 3,000 people per study. And they found that if they looked at the cost of the study and the amount saved in medical care costs, there was actually, for every dollar spent, there was $3.27 saved in medical care costs. And there was an additional $2.73 saved for every dollar spent on a health promotion program in the workplace. Now, this doesn't mean that all programs will save money, but it does mean that the best programs will save money. So this is a plot of medical care costs for Johnson & Johnson, very large global employer. And the average, these are years, and this is actually spending medical care costs per person. Now, the typical company sees their costs increase at about 4.8% per year. That's the average increase of companies in the United States. But look at the change for Johnson & Johnson. They've reduced their rate to 1%. And this is because of an excellent health promotion program that's been in place for a long time. Now, if in the United States, with Medicare, we project that Medicare will increase at about 2.7% per year. If we could reduce the increase to 1%, Medicare would be forever solvent. We could actually solve the debt problem of the United States by just achieving this same goal for Medicare increases in the United States. Now, when I talk about health promotion programs in the workplace, I think about 4 characteristics: awareness, motivation, skills, and opportunity. And you might know Alberto Ogata. He wrote a book on health promotion. He included this model. I also spoke about it when I was back here in the fall. But the idea, what's most important, is educating people on the links between healthy lifestyle and good health is not enough. It really doesn't change behavior. You have to learn how to motivate people. You have to train them in the skills. And most important, you have to provide them with opportunities to practice healthy lifestyle. And if we had more time, I would focus on this. But my focus today is how to integrate these concepts into the country. In general, what we want people to do is be smoke-free, never start smoking and quit if they start, be physically active, eat nutritious foods and avoid toxins like tobacco and too much alcohol, manage stress, and use the medical care system appropriately. Now, to describe this area, I'm going to tell you about our work at the Health Management Research Center at the University of Michigan. I'm the director of this center. We were established in 1976. We have a database that has 8 million people in the database. And for 2 million of those people, we have longitudinal data on health risks, medical costs, productivity, and for different groups between 5 years and 20 years. So this allows us to do lots of research. We've published more than 200 papers and made more than 600 presentations of our work. We're based at the University of Michigan, which is one of the largest universities in the United States, and it's the 5th largest university from the perspective of research. Now, I think these slides aren't going to show up very well on the black background. I'm not sure if we can do anything about that. This is just a list of some of the employers that we have worked with in the United States. So in our database, in our data warehouse, we have information on the individual person. We have information on health status, including health risk assessment questionnaires, also biometric measurements. We have medical care costs and pharmacy costs and productivity measures. And in some cases, we have information on how much they've participated in programs and the cultural environment in which they're working. And when we look at risks, I'll just describe these risks first. We look at alcohol, blood pressure, body mass index, cholesterol, existing medical problems, HDL cholesterol, illness days, job satisfaction, life satisfaction, their perception of health, physical activity, safety, seatbelt uses, smoking, and stress. And we consider somebody at low risk if they have 0 to 2 risks, medium risks, 3 to 4 risks, high risk, 5 or more risks. The lowest score you can get is a 50, and the highest score you can get is 100. Do you think we can make it a little bit darker in this part of the room so it's easier to see the slides? Now, this is just a plot of the different things that we've discovered over the past 30 years. And, oh, wonderful. Thank you very much. Can you still see me? Maybe if I stand right here. So, for example, in 1991, we discovered that high-risk people are high-cost people. For example, this is a plot of the percent of the population that are high-cost individuals. High-cost individuals are people in the top 10 percentile of the population. And we found that people with no risks or one risk, only about 15% of them were likely to be in that high cost, that high top 10 percentile. But people with many risks are very likely to be in the top 10 percentiles. So this was 20 years ago. This was an important discovery 20 years ago. Now, we know, of course, know it's true. We also discovered that a very small percentage of people, 1% of the population, actually accounts for about 20% of the total cost. We discovered this back in '93. And only 10% of the people account for more than half of the cost, almost $2 out of $3. So those are the very important things to learn initially. Part of the reason it's important is if we can control the costs of these people, just 20% of the population, I'm sorry, just 10% of the population, we can control most of the medical care costs. Most people are going to have some moderate costs, and that's not a problem. The problem is how do you avoid the very high costs? Now, more recently, we've looked, and by the way, this is from a study of 19,000 people. We found that as people change the number of risks, over time, people can have additional risks or they can have fewer risks. And we found, for example, as people reduce their risks, this is the amount that we actually save per person, per risk, in terms of medical care costs. So there's a savings of about $150 for every risk they cut. So a risk might be smoking, it might be being sedentary, it might be not wearing the seatbelts. And this was an important discovery because a comprehensive health promotion program at this point used to cost about $150 per employee per year. So if that program could reduce one risk, it would pay for itself. If it could reduce 5 risks, it could save 5 times $150. But an even more important discovery was, as people added risks, their costs went up even faster. In fact, an average of $350 for every increased risk that we added. So this was important because we used to focus just on trying to reduce risks of people. We thought if the people are sick, if they have risks, reduce their risks, and that's how to control the costs. But then we realized it's actually much more important to prevent people from adding risks. That's how you save the most money. It's also the easiest thing to do. If somebody is already exercising on a regular basis, just keep them exercising. If somebody's not a smoker, just keep them from not smoking. If somebody's eating well, just keep them from not eating well. And that's actually how we pay for our programs more quickly. Now, another thing we discovered in the early 2000s was that as people age, this is age and this is medical costs, as people age, their medical care costs go up. This is what we would expect. What was interesting was this represents the people with low risks, so 0, 1, or 2 risks. This is people who didn't participate in the program, and this is people with moderate risks, so it's 3 or 4 risks, and this is people with high risks. So not only do people's costs go up as they age, but they go up as their risks increase. In fact, if you look at a person 35 to 44, their risks are about $5,700. It's almost the same as somebody 75 years old who has low risks. So by adding 2 or 3 risks, you're actually aging yourself by 40 years from the perspectives of medical care costs. This was a fascinating discovery. And by the way, this was based on 250,000 people. And we discovered, and the key point is here, this is the midpoint. This is over 6 years where we looked at people's medical care costs. So we looked back for 3 years and forward for 3 years. And we found that there's typically 3 groups of people. There's one group that's always low cost, and they rarely have any medical events. There's another group that will have some minor medical events, and if you look back 3 years, they had slightly higher costs than the people with no events. The costs increased and then went back down. And then there's also a group that has very expensive costs. And what's interesting is they had high costs 3 years ago. So we're getting to the point that we can predict which people are going to have these high costs. So what we want to do is the people with the high costs, we want to have good sickness management programs, reduce errors, and have coordinated services. With people who, after they are sick, we want disease management programs, stay on the protocol, don't get worse. But most important, we want health promotion programs to keep people healthy so these spikes don't occur. This was an important discovery in 2001. It was based on more than 19,000 people. This is medical care costs, and this is the wellness risk score. This is based on our questionnaire. And what we discovered was that there's a very close association between the risk score and the medical care costs. So this is important because it's often very difficult for employers to actually measure their medical care costs year after year. That sounds like it shouldn't be true, but it's true. So we discovered that if we can just measure the health risk through the questionnaire, it's actually a proxy measure of medical care costs. So using that information, and this is a study of more than 91,000 people, the people with 0 to 2 risks, if you think of that as worth one element of medical care costs, the people with 3 to 4 risks, they have costs that are 1.3 times in addition to the 1.0.